Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews, and this is the Narcissistic Resistance. And this resistance story is brought to you by contribution from Anastasia. And here we go. Hi, Ollie, Anastasia again. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to get this out there. I've told bits and pieces to a few therapists. I've talked about it online anonymously, of course, in different forums. I've been meaning to air these fragments, memories somewhere other than in my diary. Some of them I've never written down at all. Forgive the format; it won't be so coherent, but it doesn't exist in my mind coherently. In fact, that's the biggest problem with trying to fit all these pieces together. It's also fragmented. But eventually I'll be able to shift the pieces into a coherent story, and that's exactly what I want to be able to do, to understand what happened and where I've been. It's amazing how much I just stuffed away and didn't think about, but left in my mind. But left in my mind. Honestly, this was the only thing, the abuse going on in my life. I read other people's stories, and it's nice when that they have that one person or authority figure who knows or tries to help out. But that never happened for me. I slipped through the cracks. Moreover, all the friends I ever made were all just acons, just like me. Other kids raised by narcs. I think about it now, it was just a sea of narcs and their broken victims. All the parents around me were narcs, and my own family was narcs or worse. My old therapist once asked me, "Do you have any happy memories of childhood?" This in my mind was similar to the time I read Harry Potter. My narc gave that to me ironically before it became popular. I'm not sure why. And they said to ward off the dementors, you had to visualize one of the happiest times in your life. Use that as protection, and I remember I kept thinking and thinking and thinking. I kept saying to myself, what would I do? It's good that this isn't real. But what memory would I have? Then I realized I had none. I know people will not believe this, but it does not make it any less true. Any semblance of real happiness started 19 years later when I was in college. Then I met people not so there I met people not so narkish that I burst into tears when, only having known them a few months, they remembered my birthday. That was more than I could say for anyone else before that. It meant so much, but I didn't tell them because I felt like a fool and just waited for them to toss me away, like I assumed they would inevitably would. I threw away, I threw a lot of potential relationships away out of fear, not knowing what friends could be. And a lot of us do that. Okay? That's part of the self. There's two things in there. Okay? In my broken plate theory, okay? Where your therapist is trying to get you to a happy memory so you have something, okay? But remember, you're a broken dish. So whatever happy memory you're putting on a broken dish is still a happy memory on a broken person. So it doesn't really get you anywhere. The fact that you had none kind of makes it even worse for you. And this, where you're throwing away potential relationships out of fear because you're expecting the inevitable, they're going to reject me anyway. I mean, we all do that, whether in relationships, careers, whatever it is. Okay? I can handle the loss from this point because I can control it. Okay? But if I let myself go and they get me at this point, I'm not going to be able to handle it. Self-sabotage. Also, I thought it would be interesting for people to know Narc 1, she was diagnosed NPD. She had gone to therapy and they told her she was a narcissist. Naturally, she told me, I don't think I'm very narcissistic. I'm sure they're wrong. Everyone at her job, she told me, called her a narcissist as well. They're just jealous of me. They know how much better at my job I am than them. They can't get over me. Oh yes, just like Narcissus in his reflection in the water. She would spend many hours in front of the mirror, staring at herself. Her opinion of herself was mostly negative. Yeah, they always hate themselves. Sometimes she would come into my room just to use the mirror. I had a huge mirror almost floor to ceiling. Why, I have no idea. Maybe for her. And stare and poke and prod herself. She looked at herself every which way and from every angle. She asked me how pretty she was. I told her she was very pretty. Sometimes, if she got too upset, she would whip around, hissing, "You're the reason I'm so fat. I was pretty, you know. If it weren't for you, I'd be thin again. You made me this way." I thought, that sounds about right. Pregnancy makes people fat. I would pause and say, mind you, I'm like 6 at the time. Well, that's your fault for having me now, isn't it? This is why I'll never have kids unlike you. Children ruin your life. I hate them, and you should have just aborted, killed me when you had the chance in the womb. Looks like you missed the perfect opportunity, and now you'll just have to deal with the consequences. I had a rather adult-like vocabulary as a child, and I did talk. I always startled or disturbed people. When I did talk, I always startled or disturbed people. I made them uncomfortable. They said it was like a mini adult. There was nothing childlike about me, and that I had an old soul. I hate that phrase. I was told that a lot as well as a child, that I was like a small adult. Memories. 1. I was 5. My hair was light strawberry blondish, and it came down just past my shoulders. It was thin and sort of ragged looking. I'm cooking something with Narc 1. I'm not sure if she was just incredibly stupid or what, despite the fact that she is an incredibly intelligent person. I'm watching her out of the corner of my eye, smiling as I fix things on the stove. The stove was lit, and I'm not sure why she didn't tie my hair up her back, but I turned to her and saw the flames flicker to the side of me. She watched me, and then, after a span, told me my hair was on fire. The flames quickly engulfed my hair. I panic and black out very quickly. The last thing I hear before blacking out is my own scream, and I start beating my hair frantically to put the fire out. I don't know how it got put out or what happened. I just remember her not moving to do anything. She waited. She often did that. 2, this one is pretty horrific. I remember this being one of the most painful things I've ever experienced in my entire life. The only thing that was more painful was when I got my wisdom teeth out and the medication fucked me up and I passed out from the pain while on the max amount of painkillers they would allow. I was 13ish. Once I hit puberty, like seeming a lot of women raised by narcs, I had period issues. Not anymore. These were basically 100% resolved with birth control, thank God. I had thought, if this doesn't change, I'll have to get a hysterectomy as soon as possible. Fuck this. I don't want kids. I didn't want kids and would pray to God to sterilize me by godly magic or whatever. Never happened to my knowledge. I've also noticed female survivors of childhood sexual abuse tend to have reproductive issues, somatic pain issues. Narc 1 would perpetually comment, "You're just like my sisters. You have all the same issues. It must be genetic." I used to hear that. I was just like my Uncle Kenny. "I'm nothing like you. Ha ha ha." I just realized that laughing at someone's pain isn't an exercise in empathy. It's petty. Hurts a bit to think on that for too long. Her image contorts further and further into something grotesque in my mind. When I think no real person would be like that, no one but them is like that, why, just why? The more I realize those things aren't normal expressions of empathy or parental or human level concern, the more I want to scream. Sometimes I just can't wrap my brain around it, and I live through it. As far as I know, I as far as I know, I do not have any of the usual suspects, PCOS or endometriosis. I'm still getting things checked out, but it's incredibly difficult. I get terrible PTSD syndromes and become inconsolable. It just makes everything impossible. I feel broken afterwards. So once I hit puberty, my periods were all over the place. Terrible. Sometimes I'd skip 6 or 7 months, then bleed for a whole month. I had terrible periods, absolute hell, mostly with the cramping. Didn't really honestly have any other symptoms. What I remember worst of all, most vividly, is the abdominal back body pain. But one time, and this only happened like this once, really, from what I remember, which is why it stands out. I had missed some periods, but did not think much of it. They say that's normalish in the beginning, and it was only within the first year or so. So I kept getting told to give it time. Well, let me tell you, that time was hell on earth, but no one seemed to care. And I very, very rarely gotten taken to get things checked out. Once again, Narc 1 said the equivalent of shut up already, God, get over it. If only I had a penny for every time I heard some variation of that, or that exactly. So this felt like fucking out of nowhere. It was absolutely one of the worst pains I've experienced in my entire life, which is terrifying. Which is a terrifying prospect to me, because this is supposed to be natural, dear God. I can hardly fathom a pain more exquisite than what happened. It was so random seeming, but my period started. It was the afternoon. Close to the evening, I was mildly surprised, but this stuff was so unpredictable and wild that I just shook my head woefully. Not more problems, I thought. I was 13, still pretty inexperienced at this stuff, and nothing could prepare me what would be next. I started out kind of slowly and built up to something intense and constant. It became this non-stop horrific pain that ripped through my body, absolutely shredded any semblance of being able to grin and bear it. I was so scared. It started out slightly bearable, but I took 2 full-strength pain meds immediately and hoped it would get better. It sure as shit absolutely did not get even 1% better. It got exponentially worse. I felt like dying. I was cramping so badly I started to vomit. I screamed in pain, not a girly, childish scream either, a full-throated scream of complete and utter pain. This lasted non-stop for hours and hours into the night. I called for Narc 1 and she kept telling me to get over myself. But I screamed and shrieked and through clenched teeth so much so that she started taking me seriously, rolled up her sleeves in a kind of, okay, what's going on now? My time to act. She loved being the savior to come in and save the day, and then talk about herself endlessly afterwards to whoever would listen, replaying whatever it was over and over, talking about how well she handled herself. I was crying inconsolably from the pain, could hardly talk. I was doubled over in my bed screaming, my eyes closed shut. I would vomit, start screaming again, and clutched the heating pad she had gotten me. It wasn't working at all, and I was sweating profusely from the pain and bleeding just as much. I was feverish. I knew this wasn't normal. It would come in these awful, intense waves, just cramping waves of pain, wave after wave of unbelievable pain. It was so godforsaken awful that I just knew something was wrong. This was not normal by anyone's metric, but Narc 1 didn't care. It wasn't until I was in the worst throes of pain that she got real nice. She said I looked cute when I was hurt and upset. She placed wet towels on my head to cool me down. I just screamed until it was over. I think the neighbors probably heard it. It lasted until the night. And then was over. And then was over. Basically, that was pretty much it. I guess I bled more afterwards. I'm not sure. It was just very wrong. I thought I had endometriosis because of it, but I don't know. Not sure if that's the right answer here. I feel like I'm exaggerating somehow, but I know I'm not. I hate gaslighting myself, and it drives me nuts. It always ends up feeling like just talking about this, I'm lying or making shit up or something, even when I know I'm not. But I'm not, but I can't stand it at all. I feel insane. They make me feel insane. I can tell you why you're feeling like that. It's because you go into such detail about it. It's on and on and on and on and on and on and on to get to the point that your mother didn't take care of you. You could have summed this all up in 2 sentences. You could have summed all that up in 2 sentences. But you go and you over-explain everything. You're over-explaining everything. You're using way too many words for the sake of using them. Okay, to try to cover yourself to make it seem like you're not lying. But because it just goes on and on and on and on, it seems like to yourself you are lying, and then you're caught in that trap. You got to stop over explaining yourself. I was sick and shuddering. Both narcs at the foot of my bed were wearing completely different expressions. Narc 2 was panicked out of his mind. The weak fucker could and never would do anything, ever. Just stand up there looking on helplessly. He's never been a person you can depend on. And Narc 1 was smirking then, would fleetingly feign concern. I just clutched the blankets with my hand shaking, hoping the waves of cramps and pain were over. I know I had sobbed when I wasn't screaming, but I hadn't felt the tears running down my hot and feverish face, just the pain. Eventually, I passed out from the exhaustion and slept undisturbed the rest of the night. It was like being poisoned, but that's not how poisons work. Poison has nothing to do with reproductive organs, to my knowledge. Just before I passed out, I remember I could hardly walk, and Narc 1 helped me to the shower or the bathroom or something. I also remember being sick and weak from the whole ordeal. I distinctly remember thinking, if this is just my period, God help me if I am ever forced to carry to term. Towards the end of it, I internally renewed my pledge bargain with God to stab myself to death wherever I get pregnant. I didn't want to imagine or meditate upon the possible pain of childbirth if that shit was just my shared period. You would think that would prompt a trip to the hospital, but no, not to them. Narc 1 never took me to the doctor about it. When I tried to explain the experience later to her gynecologist, that she took me to, who was awful, by the way, and frequently broke doctor-patient confidentiality, she said periods are painful, go on birth control. I didn't get on birth control for another decade, but that's a different story. She didn't seem to believe me, and I couldn't convince her of the horrific pain of that time. I also felt that the doctors never believed me about how awful things were. No, I don't want to bleed every day of the fucking month. This shit isn't normal, and no one else in my family has problems of this level with regularity. My aunts did have similarly painful periods, but at least they were regular. Again, we're still on your look. I understand here, Anastasia, this is upsetting to you, but we're still on the same point about your period. Over and over. And if when you go into the doctor and you do this, the doctor's going to shut you down. Okay, and the doctor's going to seem like this girl is way too researched or she's out for something, and you get tended to be shut down. Again, this is all basically went away after I left and then got on birth control, but that was approximately 12 years later. No one helped, no one believed me, no one cared. It's weird, whenever I left them for long periods, I would be fine and things would go back to normal. I would be so much healthier the longer I was away from them. That was a huge tip off, actually, in hindsight. 3. Narc 1 would always do my hair, and by do my hair, I mean rip it out of my head. That hurt. I would scream as loudly as possible, and she would just slowly rake it with the cheapest, shittiest brush she could find. I hated her brushing my hair. I have curly hair now, and did back then too, to an extent. I get extremely angry when I think back on this because it is so utterly preventable. Just use conditioner. Also, you aren't even supposed to brush curly hair. It doesn't need to be brushed. She did the same thing to my sister. She has no idea how to deal with curly hair. Hers was shiny, pin straight, and stereotypically pretty blonde color. 4. She never had to go to work looking nice. She very naturally had flawless, smooth skin and had been a model before going into medicine. She was naturally thinner, taller, curvier, and more feminine looking than me. She wore minimal makeup and people were constantly telling her how pretty she was. I would know. I was always around when they said stuff like that. She also had pictures, lots of pictures. People were always staring at her. Her hair was neat, her nails were strong, well done, and lacquered up. I wasn't allowed to paint my nails after the age of 5, and they were perpetually thin, brittle, splitting, and peeling. My skin never looked nice or smooth. I was always tired and was incredibly chubby as a kid, not in that cute sort of way. She made sure I was fat as possible, even though as a kid I never liked chocolates or sweets. She did, and sometimes cookies, cakes, gummies would be literally the only thing to eat in the house. Ollie, I don't even like that shit and prefer real food. If I never eat any of that junk food now for days, I never eat any of that junk food nowadays. I hated it back then. I looked like shit basically, and she bragged about dressing me in welfare or hand-me-down clothes. I hated when she bought me clothes. It would always be used against me, and I never liked this stuff anyway. It was just another gambit for control and manipulation. I was always overweight, but peaked at very overweight the year before high school. It was about 13 and then lost most of it basically upon entering high school. I felt really lucky for that. She was very contained and graceful as she walked. Everyone commented on her, and trust me, she talked about this a lot. Once I hit 12, 13, Narc 1, and my sister would gang up on me telling me, well, you're not as pretty as her, you don't look like her, you're not as feminine, you're not attractive. Don't worry, you can just get plastic surgery, you don't have to be so ugly. But this must have gone on for a long time. I went into my my old high school diaries and found an entry I had completely forgotten when I was 9, talking about how ugly I was. But there was hope that I could get surgery when I was older and had money. This is why I still haven't gone back and read much out of those diaries. It's a bit too harsh to remember now, but they're there waiting. Men would hit on her every chance they got. Unfortunately, I looked nothing like her growing up. Once I passed 4 years old, she didn't care what I looked like and would never let me buy things I liked. And shopping with her was a hellish chore. She would frequently abandon me in shopping malls or stores, and I would panic. I wouldn't let her leave the cart. Sometimes she would literally run away. She would bolt faster than I could run just to see me panic. Now I have very poor facial recognition thanks to the facial blindness, and would have trouble picking her out of a sea of people and would cry hysterically until she came back. Not because I particularly wanted her, but because I didn't know what else to do. 5. Narc 1 used to do my hair and nails. After I turned 4, she got annoyed about that. I don't know if she did this all before and just forgot, but I remembered this suddenly. I couldn't believe I had to put it away for so long. It always started out innocuously enough. She always asked, "I'll do your nails for you so you can look pretty. You'd like that, wouldn't you?" And of course, I'd eagerly clamber over and over and ask what I needed to do. I knew for just I knew for just about forever how ugly I was. Everyone told me every day. I was never a cute kid, and people would just look at me and cringe. They called me they call me nice. I got called well-mannered and quiet, but was never called cute or pretty. Something I desperately wanted but never attained. So she would start by telling me, "Go wash your hands." I'd come back with clean, dry hands. The motions were always the same, methodical and slow. It would have been okay, except that she hurt me a lot doing this. She would pull up the sides of the nail and clip my nails to nubs and then cut the skin open on every nail, and I would bleed everywhere. I would cry out loud begging her to stop, but she just responded, "No pain, no gain," or "Shut up," or "If you ever want to look nice, it's gonna hurt." Sometimes when I would refuse to give her my other hand and cry whining, "It hurts, mommy," and she'd stare angrily at me and shout, "Now shut up, stop being difficult, we're going to finish this," and slam my hands down on the table, holding me down, and would slowly cut off with the nail clippers pieces of my fingertips, followed by a quick "Sorry, it's just an accident" on each nail on each hand. Then she just painted nail lacquer over it. That hurts, if you're wondering, but it stopped the minimal bleeding. I stopped getting my nails done eventually. Similarly with my hair, after ripping it out slowly, very slowly, and then fast alternating as I screamed at her, she would either curl or straighten it depending on her mood. Frequently she'd burn my head with a curling iron, the blow dryer, or the straightener. She said she did this because she had to, and she had to get close to the roots. I'd say the worst time was when I was 13 and she pressed the straightener into my scalp and forehead. She got mad at me when I yelled at her and told me to stop being such an ungrateful bitch, and I should be happy she was straightening it in the first place. Because I was so awful looking, at least now I would look decent for school. Except it blistered and turned into a burn across my hairline and forehead that was hot to the touch the whole rest of the day. She chuckled to herself, then finished my hair. I went to school like that. Everyone asked what happened. I told them I burned myself straightening my hair. 6. My parents fought a lot. They would get into this huge exaggerated fights. At first it was just the screaming sort, but eventually they got physical. I remember our teachers asked to write about something in our school notebooks for English class. I knew exactly what they were getting at. The school administration had been looking to report more instances of abuse. The kids were had been looking to report more instances of abuse they suspected, suffering at home. Fortunately, I had seen this play out when one of my 11, 12-year-old friends confessed to the school nurse she was cutting herself with razor blades. She gave me some wise advice. If you're going to do something or feeling something, don't let them know. They'll just use it against you and it'll only get worse. I saw them bring it up to her parents, and she got into a lot of trouble and just got abused more in the long run. I knew that she was right. It was neither the place nor time. Besides, they still had complete control over my life, and there isn't much you can do at 11. It was a prison sentence I'd have to wait out. Unfortunately, she had made the mistake of talking about her pain, but I wasn't going to make that mistake, not if I could avoid it. However, I did make a slightly smaller mistake. For that English journal, I decided to write about something I thought was rather low key, but still sort of exciting. They didn't fight around me much, but they often wanted present a united front, wanted present a united front. Narc 1 made this huge deal about not fighting in front of me, but frankly, I didn't give two shits about it. I didn't care if they fought, and I didn't care about the threats that they made. I knew they weren't the homicidal kind, and they were too fearful to do much damage without a bulletproof excuse. I didn't care much about domestic violence. Besides, they threatened to kill me themselves and others all the damn time. They were never real. They opened their mouths, they were lying. They deserved each other. Narc 2 seemed to use these discussion screaming matches as outlets of sorts. And holy hell would Narc 1 egg him on further. She would bait him, which at time, for the life of me, I couldn't figure out. Sometimes if I were in the same room, I would watch. I would never intervene and occasionally just walk away and wait in the bathroom or basement wondering if I was supposed to find this all upsetting. Will they expect me to be distraught by their fighting? I know kids should find this upsetting. Maybe I should practice crying. Maybe I should go back upstairs and try to separate them, saying something about family. Then I thought against it. Nah, might get hit. Better stay down here. They'll shut up forever. They'll shut up eventually. Then I would stay away until it got quiet and all the doors had been slammed. For the English paper, I wrote about an incident they were screaming about who would take me to school. I tried to reason with them, and Narc 2 got his characteristic sort of angry. He would get bright crimson red in the face and start foaming at the mouth and scream such that his eyes bulged and the veins in his face and neck popped out. I knew this well because it would be the same kind of angry he would get when he went on his hitting rampages, chasing him around for the hours and hours on end as a toddler. Same face. They slammed stuff against the doors, knocked over things, smashed shit, the usual hysterics. Narc 2 screamed his heart out, though I might have a heart attack given how worked up he got. I can't remember if it was the same time or not, but frequently he would punch the walls and break the tiles. He would flip furniture and threaten. Sometimes he would manhandle Narc 1, but it was rare because it was plain as day that he really had no power. I often wondered why she let these little tizzies go on, why she let him knock everything over, bash stuff up. I figured it was a calculated release. She would bait him so he would get wound up, have a fit, calm down, leave, come back, then apologize, or not. And then it would be peaches and cream again. It was always the same. And if you weathered it with enough apathy, then the good parts would come up again. But I preferred these knockout fights. In the aftermath, it was quiet. Everyone sulked about. No one mocked me. They had gotten their fill elsewhere. I was ignored and left kindly alone. I liked that. It was similar to when they left me at the house. I liked those times too. Anyway, I described this in my essay, and later the teacher pulled me aside and asked me, I read your paper, and I wanted to ask you if you had anything you wanted to tell me, anything you wanted to say. It's okay if you do. Are you okay? I was beyond cynical by this point. Maybe if I had been around 4, that would have meant something to me, but I was 11 and jaded as fuck. Really, what could they have possibly done? Nothing, absolutely nothing. Listen, look, I gotta ask you guys, when you guys write to me, you can't ask questions of yourself within the story because it just draws it out. It draws it out and it just does damage on my voice. It's like I need everybody to kind of just get to it. You got to get to it. The narcs weren't drug addicts, they weren't alcoholics. I knew the chances of me getting put in foster care were slim to none, unless one of them killed the other. And despite the constant threats to do so, that didn't look like it would be happening anytime soon, much to my chagrin. If anything, it would just turn into another experience where I'd be told I'm ungrateful, selfish, lying. I just didn't know what real abuse looked like. So I was arrogant, so I was an ignorant brat. So I was an ignorant brat making ignorant claims about things I couldn't possibly know. I thought the same thing, and I thought the same thing I thought when I was 7, and I had been taken to see a child psychiatrist. And what the fuck are you going to do? Absolutely nothing. You're useless. You'll never help me. I knew Narc 1 had way too many people under her thumb, and they all believed her. She was a pillar of the community type. I had plenty of fantasies about being taken away to foster care, but I knew I had no evidence, nothing provable. This was before the internet, cell phones became popular, or at least I never had access to that stuff. And my narcs still use cassette tapes and listens to records on their record player they had in the attic or living room. All my diaries and notebooks, hiding places got ransacked weekly at least, and then Narc 1 would tell me about what she read. So I wrote nothing. No one would ever help me, and I knew it. There was no escape, and I just had to wait and hope. I just didn't go insane in the process. Who believes kids anyway? I had no broken bones, lacerations, nothing to go with, so I said nothing. I denied everything. If I told and got put back, if I told and got put back, it would have been going from the frying pan into the fire. I told that teacher I had nothing to say. She pressed, and I'm repeating my stance. I have nothing to say. She just looked and asked and said, okay. It never came up again. This is part of your problem, Anastasia. If you're not, you're over-explaining. 7. Of course, there is more. There always is, but this is something much like the nail clipping. I had totally forgotten it until one day, randomly, it all came flooding back. In this particular memory, I am 5. This is also went on for years. Every time I got sick, which was with extreme frequency, I needed to take medicine. I hated the shitty tasting medicine. They made me drink it so often, and it was absolutely repulsive. Drink this, it'll make you better. You'll get better faster if you drink this, they insisted. Fuck you very much. I'll pass, I thought to myself. I just nodded my head and said, no, I don't want to. It tastes gross. I hate it. The taste was just so pungent and disgusting I couldn't bear it. It was bitter and hard. I would rather feel sick. I'm not sure why they forced this on me at these particular times, because other times they wouldn't give me anything and just tell me to stuff it and deal. Most times they didn't care if I got better or not and wouldn't really give me anything. So of course they would get angry at my snotty response, but I can't tell you how much I hated this. It was repulsive, and I'd rather die than drink it. I would recommend different flavors or ways to let me drink it that would make it more tolerable. Let me have some juice with this, then it won't be so bad. Can you get a different flavor of medicine? Can I coat my tongue with something sweet so the taste doesn't stick to my mouth? Nope. Beauty in the pain. So it seems. So they made me drink it, but I a bit more resistant at that age. I still had some fight left in me, not much though. So when I wouldn't comply, Narc 2 would pin me to the table, cover my nose. Mind you, I'm already sick. I would still refuse closing my mouth. He'd try to force my mouth open or jam the liquid into my mouth, but I would clench my teeth shut and turn away. He'd grab my head, suffocate me until I gasped for air. The first time he did this, he shoved the medicine deep into my mouth and tilted my head back. The next time he did this, I sucked air in between my teeth every once in a while. Of course, I hold out as long as I could. Kicking and trying my best to get away, near impossible. I was pinned to the table or counter or whatever surface with the rest of his body. I'd move all over the place and held my breath until I fainted. Come to him, shoving the medicine in my mouth, would shut my mouth, and the suffocating would resume. And this would sometimes happen 3 or 4 more times before he was successful. And 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 then, even then, I would sometimes spit it out, which only made him angrier, but I was damned not to drink or death. I mean, obviously I just passed out and went limp, but it made me so fucking angry. I was profoundly angry and hate-filled child. I was always sad and suicidal. Thanks everyone for your thoughts, comments, and time. Something from the last video. CPTSD, diagnosed as autism from narcissistic sexual abuse. I think a lot about exposing them. I think I'll need to heal myself more because I don't fully know the extent of the abuse yet. I can just feel almost underneath my skin. I can feel all the things I do not wish to acknowledge. I would prefer to just keep out of sight, out of mind. However, I need to tell this story. I need people to know this happened, that it can happen. I didn't think it was a big deal at first, and I still have a hard time thinking on it. But I just can't keep this to myself forever. I can't just not tell people about my past. I'm telling you, you can tell people about your past, you can tell people about all of this, but you cannot. And what your problem is here is you're over explaining this shit to everybody. And you're getting way too graphic, way too fast. Too much time to get to the point. And that's not to belittle your story, because I've read your other stories and I know it's horrible, but you're doing yourself a complete disservice by doing this. My low life has become black, untellable, shameful void if I don't ever say what happened. I can't just hide it because it makes people uncomfortable. I don't know. It makes me angry, and it's very confusing. Also, lastly, I just wanted to mention I never realized or connected the dots that my father came into my room at night once when I was older. I always made it sound okay in my brain because who knows, maybe that's what parents do, watch their young kids sleep all fucking night and upset them. I read that other parents do that too, which I thought was disgusting, but I figured, well, it must be parental, and I'll just never understand. Maybe it is all on me in the end after all. I held out hope that it was okay and rationalized it, making it all my fault. I kept saying at least I wasn't older. Then I remembered why he hated the dog so much and how many years after that he kept coming back, and I felt horrible over and over again. I know he can I know he gave up eventually, but for me realizing that, yeah, I was 12 and 13, maybe 14, fucked with excuses I had laid in place to make it sound okay. Then I was reminded of so many other things. Small things he did or said to me around high school, and it made a lot more sense. The out and out groping and even annoying touching, grabbing my waist, holding me, freaking out about something like a pedo. My mother's comments to him, everyone can tell, then snickering. He says things like, I made you, I can do whatever I want. What sane person says shit like that? I've only heard abusers say that, or enablers justify it. My mom would buy me these awful bikinis. Didn't even like them and show off to him. He wouldn't, and he wouldn't let me leave. Wait, my mom would buy me these awful bikinis and show off to him and wouldn't let me leave. I can't think about it too much. Every year he looked worse and worse. He knew what he was doing, but he didn't matter. But that didn't matter more than what he wanted. He was guilty about it. He knew they were wrong. It's all fucked up. I just can't think about it too hard for too long. I knew this stuff. I knew stuff was bad growing up, but having the perspective as a young adult of just what that level of cognition, understanding, and responsibility is, how fully aware of your actions and their consequences are as an adult who lived decades of life and had decades to heal their own trauma, decades to change, decades to come better, makes everything seem so much worse. As a kid, I figured they just couldn't do any better, or that it was normal, or just the way adults were. But now I know that they did the best. They did the very absolute least of their abilities and didn't care what the result was one way or another. At least they're old, isolated, and wouldn't hurt anyone else. They don't have access to it. They don't have access anymore. They have no friends, no family left. I even took the dog. They have no savings. So I guess all that's left for them is death. That is all that's left for them is death. They made it that way. Look, Anastasia, I'm going to tell you here. If you're going to go and talk to people to get this story out, you're going to have to not over-explain it, because people are going to glaze over. And then they come back, they're going to be like, oh, she's still talking, she's crazy. See, your parents got you so torqued up that you have to try to prove everything and over-explain yourself. You over-explain yourself to the point where people stop believing you. I think that's probably what's happened a lot in your life. Okay? You have to get to the point when you're trying to explain these things. You can't start a story and then go, and I understand. I mean, you want to touch on the abuse. Okay, but when it's like you're painting this graphic picture and then it almost seems like you're deliberately painting a picture, which is why it seems like to yourself, why does it seem like I'm lying? Because this almost seems like a novel to me. Okay? You need to talk in terms of specifically, not what happened. So you're writing, it seems like you're writing this to a publisher other than somebody who's trying to help you. I'm not saying that's what you're doing here, and I'm not saying you're making this up. But when you're trying to get your point across, okay, this isn't a fiction novel. This is real life. So you need to talk in real life terms and knock off the long, flowery diatribes and added words, because then it just makes it look like this person's trying to pretty up a really nasty story for something else. And I think that's what your mind is doing, is why you say, why do I feel like I'm lying? Because you're not writing your emotion. Write what happened. Don't write to pretty it up. That's the issue. And that's what, just talk in plain terms. Simple. This happened, this happened, this happened. No reason for the long diatribes, because in the end, those diatribes are only hurting yourself. So, but to your last point, you could have summed this all up, I think, in probably 15 minutes. Okay? Because the overall goal is, okay, The overall theme is all your parents have left for them after all that abuse is death. That's it. That's what awaits them. And now it's time for you to move on with your life. So thank you for your contribution. Thank you. And thank you for the story. I appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comments section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a narcissist you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up a Skype chat, private phone call, have a private video made, or you just like to support the channel or sponsor a video for someone else, you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. I'll have the video right back to you. Also, remember to like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance. Take care, everybody. Bye.